Good morning. Today we will start with chapter 5 of class 10th English Literature Reader First Flight. So the chapter that we are going to take up today is The 100 Dresses Part 1 by Alvasar Esther. So before we start, a brief introduction about the author. Alvasar Esther was a renowned American author. She was known for her children's stories. The 100 Dresses is one of her famous writing. She was originally a librarian, and her writing career began following a case of tuberculosis. Bedridden while recovering, she began writing some of her childhood memories, which were later turned into full-length children's books. So before we start with the chapter, a brief introduction. So the 100 Dresses, as the name suggests, is a story about the 100 dresses. So as we read the chapter, we'll come to know about the mystery about the 100 dresses that have been talked about. So before the reading of the chapter and the explanation, I would like to give you a brief introduction about the Polish American community in the United States. So this story is about a girl who is a Polish girl, and her name is Wanda Petronsky. She is a girl who has migrated to America, and she is there, and she has now started going to school with the American children. So as we read, we will come to know about this girl. The Polish American community in the United States. So by this we come to know that it is about a community in the United States, about the Poles who have migrated to the United States. So let's read about it. The first Polish immigrant arrived in America in 1608, but the largest wave of Polish immigration occurred in the early 20th century, when more than 1 million Poles migrated to the United States. The Polish state did not exist at that time, and the immigrants were identified according to their country of origin rather than to ethnicity. They were identified as Russian Poles, German Poles, and Austrian Poles. So in this, it is given that in 1608, there were people from Poland who migrated to America, but the largest number of these people, of the Polish, they immigrated to America in the early 20th century. So they were around million of the people who migrated, million of Poles. Poles here refer to the native of Poland. So these Poles, they migrated to America in the early 20th century. And when these people, they migrated, so that was the time, like they were identified according to their country of origin. So these people, they were referred to as the Russian Poles, the German Poles, and the Austrian Poles. One of the most notable Polish American communities is in Chicago and its suburbs. So Chicago is sometimes called the second largest Polish city in the world, next only to Warsaw, the capital of Poland. Polish American was sometimes discriminated against in the United States, as were the Irish, Italians, and the Jews. So now in this, it is given that these people, they settled around Chicago and its suburbs. So Chicago is sometimes referred to as the second largest Polish city in the world. And these Polish Americans, they were discriminated, and there was a lot of discrimination going on at that time. And they were discriminated in the United States, like the Irish, the Italians, and the Jews were also discriminated. So according to the United States 2000 census, 667,414 Americans, of age 5 years and older reported Polish as the language spoken at home, which is about 1.4% of the people who speak languages other than English, or 0.25% of the US population. So by this we can see that it's a large number that these people are talking about. So now let's start with the chapter. Today, Monday, Wanda Petronsky was not in her seat. But nobody, not even Peggy and Madeline, the girls who started all the fun, noticed her absence. Usually, Wanda Petronsky sat in the seat next to the last seat in the last row in the room number 13. She sat in the corner of the room where the rough boys who did not make good marks sat, the corner of the room where there was most scuffling of feet, most roars of laughter when anything funny was said, and most mud and dirt on the floor. So in this, it is given that it was Monday and Wanda Petronsky, she was not present that day. She was not there in her seat, and nobody noticed that she was not present. Even the girls, Peggy and Madeline, who started all the fun, they also did not know that Wanda Petronsky was not there in the class that day. So Wanda Petronsky, she always sat in the last seat, in the last row, in room number 13. And it is there only the boys, the rough boys, who made a lot of sound, who did not get good marks also. So those boys did sit there. And when anything funny happens, so that was the time that there were roars of laughter, and that was the area where there was a lot of mud and dirt on the floor. Wanda did not sit there because she was rough and noisy. On the contrary, she was very quiet and rarely said anything at all. And nobody had ever heard her laugh out loud. Sometimes she twisted her mouth in a crooked sort of smile, but that was all. So it is that although Wanda, she used to sit with the boys who were quite rough and who did make a lot of noise. But this girl, she was a very shy girl. She did not make any noise also. She was very quiet. And it is that nobody had heard her laughing also loudly. And it was sometimes only that she did twist her mouth also. And that was just to smile. Other than that, she was a very quiet and a very shy girl. Nobody knew exactly why Wanda sat in that seat, unless it was because she came all the way from Bogan Heights and her feet were usually caked with dry mud. But no one really thought much about Wanda Petronsky once she sat in the corner of the room. So, in this, it is given that nobody knew that why she always took up that seat only in room number 13. So it is that maybe this girl, she came from Bogan Heights. That was a suburb, and it is when she came from Bogan Heights all the way to her school. So that time there was a lot of dust, dry mud that was there on her feet. And it is that she always went there and nobody bothered after that why she always sat on that seat, and that too with the rough boy.